Hi, Internet. I'm John Matos, the co-host of StriderTalk, um, welcoming my friend and colleague, Matt C. Welcome, Matt.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna have some fun tonight. It's gonna be an interesting one.
hmm Um, so how you been holding up? What have you been doing recently to kind of get some entertainment in your life during this crazy time?
Well, I tell you, I don't know what it is. There's something really strangely comforting about old British television from like the '70s.
Oh,
I don't know what. I think like for some
that's
reason,
your thing?
I was like raised on like Mr. Bean and like Are You
Uh,
Being Served and trying to think of what else.
oh, welcome, Matt. Matt Seibel's in the chat.
Oh, great. How you doing, buddy? Mr. Ezra. We've So I just watched a lot of that as a kid for some reason. So
hmm
like bad audio quality, but like really earnestly done. I guess I could keep circling back to this. Is I'm interested in. It's fun when all the fluff of production value is almost non-existent, but there's really good writers and actors. You know, a lot of people off the
hmm
Shakespearean stage, and they're going to do like a dystopian drama about I just watched one from 1975 called Survivors, where a contagion that accidentally escapes a Chinese lab
Oh,
spreads across the entire planet
oh, my
via
word.
air travel, and everyone doesn't take it very seriously, and it's very interesting to see. Uh, it's just kind of like day in the life kind of snapshot responses where people it just seems very casual, ground level, like um, nowadays with modern antibiotics and stuff, this shouldn't be an issue, and it just gradually descends until there's
Mm.
just people. It's almost like we're not ready for this yet, but it's almost like Last of Us 2 by the end, or Last of Us
Oh,
1, where it's like you're just kind of walking through a wilderness of civilizational wreckage. It's it's quite good, uh,
but
but
that sounds cool.
So that's me. What about you? What have you been doing to stay sane?
So I just started watching Bosch. It's an Amazon
Hmm.
cop procedural series.
Okay.
But it's interesting because it's based on a novel series by Michael Connolly.
Hmm.
He's also the author of The Lincoln Lawyer. They're two kind of like brother series almost, because the two characters are cousins.
Yeah.
That was like the beginning of Matthew McConaughey's Lincoln obsession. Like he did that movie, and then he was like in the commercials and doing all
Yeah.
those weird kind of like memeable things. Um,
Of course.
but Bosch is it's really interesting because it's like it has a really good handle on like police politics without making it very like dry. Um, it's because it has
Oh,
what's his
neat.
name? It has see, I was just torturing my sister for not knowing his name. Um, but there's this guy that shows up in every um, conspiracy thing imaginable.
Hmm.
Whenever you're watching like a sci-fi movie, Lance Reddick.
Hmm.
So Lance Reddick is the conspiracy man. He'll show up in random like B movies, and like that there must be a conspiracy because he's like the G man that's
Yeah.
behind everything.
Nice.
So he plays the police chief, and he um, like is trying to become mayor. This is now like the sixth season of this show. Um, but Titus Welliver, who played spoiler alert, the Man in Black in Lost,
Hmm.
is the main character, and he's like this ex-military cop. So he like always kind of like quote unquote plays by his own rules. Um,
Yeah. Sure.
but it's just an interesting. I like it because it shows like what actual like it'll they take a case and they use the whole season to kind of flesh it out, and it's multiple you know multiple people in the organization that are investigating different parts of a case, and then
Hmm.
usually it all comes together to some kind of like reveal some kind of corruption or
Oh,
something like
sure.
that. Um, so yeah, so it's been real fun watching that. I also watched this movie called Primer. That was a really interesting
That sounds
time
familiar.
travel movie.
Yeah.
It's like one of
Primer.
those ones that actually tries to portray it in some kind of realism where like
Oh, that's
because
like the
this
two
person,
buddies in the garage. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
because they
that's probably my
traveled.
favorite movie of that
Oh
genre.
yeah, no, that like watching it, it felt like a classic sci-fi thing,
Hmm.
especially because the one character's like he becomes obsessed with it in
Yeah.
like a very kind of like Orwellian type of thing where it's like I'm gonna keep doing this as long as it benefits me, and the
Yeah.
friends like trying to get him to stop, but it kind of goes out of control. So yeah, that was really cool, and it's such a good example of a low budget independent sci-fi movie that just like does it better than most, like something like Butterfly Effect or something like
Yeah.
that where they're kind of like dumbing it down.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was one of my it's now one of my favorite sci-fi movies. So I was glad I
It's so
checked it
clean
out.
and efficient and so well written and doesn't talk down to you to the point where you really do need to. I needed to discuss it. Maybe you understood it immediately, but I needed time
No, I need.
to say
There
like
was a
what
very
happened at
good
that
YouTube
party.
video
Yeah.
that was like literally took you line by line and like
Oh, there you go.
time travel by time travel thing to kind of
Yeah.
explain what happened.
Because you needed some time to be like, okay, at the basketball court where he's listening to the stuff, and then okay, when they went to the yeah, that's really, I mean, that's kind of what that. It's a great thing. It's almost like a time travel lets you do almost like a procedural drama in a
Hmm.
sense of because the scenario becomes so complicated quickly that you kind of have to play a whodunit game just
Hmm.
to keep up with what the characters are doing, just to
Hmm.
survive the almost nightmare scenario that they've made for themselves, which is
Oh,
great.
and I forgot about this. There was another movie I watched. It was called Train to Busan.
Mhm.
I watched this on the recommendation of this guy Philip DeFranco, who does kind of
Oh yeah.
YouTube. He does like you know just straight world news.
Uh
Usually
huh.
front loads it with like some YouTube drama or whatever.
Yeah, he
Um,
sounds familiar.
but he's been proselytizing about this movie for like ever since he saw it on Netflix because it's this like Korean zombie movie. Um, and he's saying it's like, and the production value is really good. It's like they all the people that play zombies have that like really historied kind of like Asian theatrics with like rather than it
Mm.
being all about the makeup making them look like zombies or like really bad or really like involved CGI. It's just like their acting and their contorting is what makes them evoke zombies.
Oh, I love that. It's like a kabuki thing. That's kind
Yeah,
of cool.
totally, totally.
That's a good
So
take.
so that it was a really good movie, but the ending is so tragic.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I tweeted at him and I was like, I found out that you are the monster. And he liked it, and so did a couple other people who
Oh,
probably
nice.
were traumatized by it.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I mean, it is good, but yes, it is also very, very sad.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice when I guess that's one of the upsides. That's what Twitter and all that was sold to us as in 2004 or whatever, 2009 was guess what? You can you watch something and then you can hit up the creator and say, "Hey, that was pretty cool." And then they can like it. It seems like simpler halcyon times when we get to do something like that.
Right, right. Yeah, I like what Matt's thinking. He's watching DVDs. He checked out at the library and
Yeah.
rereading a favorite novel.
Oh, by the way, Justin Dutton in the chat. Just want to shout out to him. He he promoted the last couple hours of the Curie campaign. He bought a support the troops perk, which
Oh,
was
awesome!
yeah. He donated enough money to for me to at cost put 20 books into active overseas military.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's all 100% him just being a really cool guy. So just wanted to shout out to Justin. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, three cheers for Justin.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
So.
speaking of fulfilling,
Hmm.
let me shill for you for a second.
Oh, cool.
Um, let's put up this Chrome tab here. Boop. So yeah, so you're helping a friend. Um, I don't know. Do you know how to pronounce his name by now?
Well, he goes by he
Oh,
likes his handle, and he
oh,
just
is
goes
that
by
is that is
Neshitobi.
that his handle then?
Yeah, yeah. Well, his name, yeah. For,
Yeah,
for the
I,
world just needs to know him as Nashitobi. So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I had put that in the description, and I was like, that does not sound like a Ukrainian name. But
Yeah.
but but anyway, I love this art. Um, I backed right away because this is right up my alley. Noir,
Yeah, isn't it
Lovecraftian
though?
horror.
Yeah, it's right up my
Um,
alley too.
and yeah, I'm just I and like you said, he has a good handle on the tropes of noir and
Hmm.
having it be really recognizably um, of that kind of genre
Yeah,
while also really making interesting horror art. So
yeah.
I'm all for it. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it's. I think it's very clearly a significant passion project that's been he's been cooking it up for years now. So uh, it's not something he's just flying off the cuff with. He's committed. Uh, he's producing it, and yeah, it's gonna happen. So I feel confident we're gonna hit the 15K he needs to handle things. It's a bit steeper than other campaigns,
Mm,
but I think we just got to get out there and do more live streams. I'm gonna have to do more on his behalf because of the time zone difference. But yeah, he's an incredible artist. He's a good storyteller, and everyone I think that looks into this book generally is very impressed. I haven't seen anyone who's not impressed with the quality.
mm-hmm.
So just a matter of visibility. It's one of those things, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
yeah, I'm excited. Uh,
Yeah. So okay, so first on the list was so we're going to talk about an interesting thing that happened on a video game, right? We're going to do a couple
sure.
of video game news things.
Yeah.
So there was a concert. Do you want
Oh
to?
yeah. Okay. So I was just randomly testing um, for a series that I'm gonna try to do called Fortnite for the Win, or
Mhm.
sorry, Fortnite Fellowship for the Win. Um, and to talk about like, okay, whenever I get into one of these battle royale games, I'm always like, okay, let's survive as a team. Let's like try to do this strategically, and
Mhm.
most if not all the time, the person wants to get like the best loot, and so everybody kind of stratifies and goes off on
Sure.
their own.
Yeah.
And so the few times that like I've gotten to the end and like won with a team, it's always been really rewarding. So I figured this would be a fun way to bring gaming to the channel, but also
Mhm.
kind of bastion one of those core tenets of the Strider brand, which is fellowship. But
Yeah. Love it.
just randomly, I was going on to Fortnite to just test audio and video and everything, and then I got put into this um, concert, and so like there's different like taunts where we can dance
Cool.
and
So you
everything.
participated. That's great.
Yeah, so it was like I wasn't sure if I like could choose not to,
Yeah.
but like it would just so happen that it was available, so I figured I would check it out. So okay, so the last time it was a Marshmallow concert, right? And I
Huh.
was pretty sure the whole thing was just on this disco,
Uh
um,
huh.
this like disco area here. But then all of a sudden, when the music starts, there's this little like planet here thing that erupts here, and then it
Yeah.
became like a bigger
Yeah. Kind of
like,
interactive. You gotta have to run up to it and all that kind of thing.
right,
Yeah.
and then like the water changed here,
Yeah.
and that was kind of cool.
So
And then
so Fortnite's becoming more than it's almost like turning into. I remember games like Half Life. or these kind of like MMO type community spaces. Obviously, like WoW. Is that kind of what they're doing, where they're like, here's these events and everyone can just kind of hang out and attend and
Yeah, so I had actually watched. There's a channel called Folding Ideas. Oh, so
uh
yeah, here's him as a
yeah,
hologram,
it's pretty cool.
and you start flying in the air. Um, so uh, I think back when the whole marshmallow thing happened,
Uh
Folding Ideas was talking about how like they're the people behind Fortnite are trying to sell Fortnite as like almost like you would with a Facebook or Twitter. Like the
yeah,
people's eyes are the currency, and so they business to business they can sell that as a kind of like we have people in this thing.
yeah. They
But
can pay. So a creator like this guy can, I guess, pay to have a concert here and
right,
make a lot of money or
but
something.
I think it's an interesting um, idea because it kind of assumes that like I guess it's assuming because there's a certain like age demographic
Yeah,
and there's like um you know that you're just assuming kind of like okay we have people in this age range they won't mind the game randomly turning into a concert experience and that like
exactly.
it's kind of an interesting tactic and personally
Yeah.
like I thought it was very interesting visually. I think
Uh
if it
huh.
was kind of like the marshmallow thing where it was just like literally like there's a screen and it's acting like a normal like almost like as if real life is like a 2D experience like
Yeah.
it's just a fake looking concert then I
Uh huh.
probably would have gotten a little like more maybe upset or just like kind of like
Oh,
okay I have
sure.
to wait until this is over and then I could
Yeah.
actually play the game.
It's almost like
um
a cut scene, kind of. Yeah.
right, but this was actually kind of like cool to look at. It seems like they
Yeah.
took a lot of time to
Yeah.
animate stuff. And it was all different types of it had this kind of post-apocalyptic thing and then
Yeah.
it was more like a laser show.
So the whole concert's like 8 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, it was about I would say it was about like like 6 minutes and 30 seconds
Yeah.
around there because it took a little bit for it to
Oh,
start.
sure. Wow. Yeah, I guess I dig it. I mean, this is the next. I mean, this is what people really dig, is that community aspect feel
Hmm.
of where you get to have a personalized experience of these events, that you don't want to miss out on. And this goes beyond. This is going to be a lot more enjoyable than the than just playing the game as you normally would play it on a given night. I think is as fun as the game seems to be for lots of people. Like
Hmm.
this sort of thing takes it to the next level. So it's cool that they're figuring that out. They're like blending that sort of MMO event feel with you know
Hmm.
this
Yeah,
sort of
and
genre.
this was literally 2001, where,
Yeah,
where I'm flying into
that's
I'm
cool.
becoming the Star Child.
Yeah, yeah, the like Event Horizon thing and yeah, that's cool. Wow. Okay, so that's an overall pretty positive experience. I was kind of wondering. It's I do get curious about what Zoomers think of this sort of thing.
Hmm.
Because people have been doing this on these sort of games for like 20 years now, and but it's based on assumptions of what people, I guess it's like a digital version of what people like doing,
Hmm.
what millennials and Generation X people like doing. But I guess this is cool for younger crowds too. I suppose. I don't know.
And
If
I
this
did
is the
I
music
did
you
like
like.
that it didn't seem too try hard in the sense that it wasn't um like if they say like it had become like there had been like shooting rounds in it, like there
Yeah.
had been like he had tried to gamify it in some way that
Hmm.
might have seemed like you know um or like if like making it so that he's the bad guy and you have to like shoot him like it's a bullet hell type thing.
Yeah. You
um
think that'd be a little too try hard, or
yeah,
yeah,
but the fact that it was just kind of like they animated this specific thing and
yeah,
it had all these different kind of like um these different like timed animated portions. And it was each one was also different. Like you were swimming because it was underwater.
Yeah.
It caught my interest, and it wasn't like it didn't feel like I was being, my time was stolen from me or something.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, good on them for figuring that out. That's kind of a neat moment. It was trending for a while. People were talking about it a lot, and I saw a lot of positive responses. So that's cool. Yeah. So okay, so next up on the docket, I believe we have Last of Us. That's actually a really boring. Here's the spoilers. If anyone wants to read that, but so there's a lot of like painful expressions people have. uh, Pretty mixed, but mostly negative reactions. So this game, did you play? Did you play, or did you watch the Let's Play or anything like that of the first
So
game?
I saw a lot of people that did like they like their reactions to it.
Uh huh.
And so I know the kind of really famous intro sequence.
Oh yeah.
And I know like the rest of the game has very tragic
Yeah.
implications. And I remember having read the plot at one point. It's kind of slipped my mind since then.
Oh neat.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was kind of interesting during this time. There were a couple big story games that were big. So mine, the
Yeah.
one that I played, and then I don't know if I finished it, but I watched the ending for was Bioshock Infinite.
Oh
Um,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and
That was around that time. Yeah.
yeah, and there were a couple like big, high profile story games at that
Like
time.
2015, something like that.
Yeah, around there.
Hmm.
But I didn't actually play this per se. Um,
Yeah.
I kind of know I know the cultural kind of like reaction to it.
Yeah, it was a big kind of zeitgeist moment because like I was saying behind the scenes, so they spent they spent a lot of money
Mhm.
making a game that was very different from what people were used to from Naughty Dog, which usually had um, like a very like I was saying off stream, like indulgent. Uh, I mean, this is one of my favorite franchises of all time,
Oh, cool.
Uncharted, and I mean that's my favorite. Not Last of Us. Last of Us is very
Oh.
good, but Uncharted's better. I like the indulgent adventure stuff, and it's very PG-13 on the moral implications of your actions and
Mhm.
the violence and the plot
Yeah, I think
scenario and
maybe that's
everything.
probably what has gotten me not to invest in some of these is that like I don't necessarily I don't it's not that I have some kind of like objection to it,
Yeah,
but there's something about like I don't get a lot from putting myself in that situation where like
yeah,
you saw this guy's leg off and then maybe he will not turn into a zombie, that type of thing. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know that I want to put myself through that
There's a
experience.
lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what that this game is in a lot of ways. I'd still say so. There's very difficult, challenging, heartbreaking, kind of like the most the best moments that you had in Walking Dead
Mm,
occur in this game. It's
mm,
very well written. It's very well planned out. Lots of it's very cutscene heavy for those sort of moments.
mm,
They don't do like in game type stuff so much. I mean, you're kind of dialoguing with the characters as you go along, which is always nice.
mhm,
Uh, the only thing that this really added that was new, I guess, was so it's basically there's a father figure who has lost his daughter from the pandemic. There's a girl who's lost everything as well, and
mm,
though you can see where this goes, though they don't have a natural reason to trust each other or to have kind of a kinship relationship of
mhm.
trust. They form that over the course of the story,
Right.
and by the end, I don't feel bad spoiling the end of the first game. They he You end up having to make a decision to you're trying to get Ellie, the girl here, to a particular facility where people can do some testing and possibly cure the humanity from this infestation zombie thing.
Hmm.
And you make a decision to basically to pull her out from that because you realize that um, in order to do tests on her, because she's kind of like the miracle messiah child, sort of
Uh-huh.
biologically. You've seen that kind of trope before, and it's
Right.
well done here. But in order to do those sort of tests, they're going to have to kill her, and because of where this guy's life has taken him, where his central scar is to have lost his daughter and his wife and family and everything he knew and loved, and now over the course of playing a 20-hour game, you've seen him uh, kind of transfer that to this new daughter relationship.
Hmm.
He rips her out of that and kills all the scientists, and then
So
they
is
can.
it a game that forces you to do that, or can you like
Well,
actually allow them to
you,
get
I
this?
think you can end. So the canon ending is that you make that decision to kill the scientists. You can
Okay.
end the game, if I remember right. You can end the game giving her up, but the canon ending is that you make the choice. You just you follow through and play the remaining 20 minutes or so,
Mm.
and kill everybody, and then you lie to her because she's unconscious during these events, and you tell her that you didn't do what you said you just did. So you're going to now try and take her to a a place where humans aren't trying to cure, not trying to fix the situation. They're just trying to survive. You're
Uh-huh.
just trying to find that encampment, and
Gotcha.
that's kind of where the story leaves off. And it leaves you with a really obviously it's difficult to see. It's rewarding in a way because you went through that, but it brings up moral challenges, and it's very challenging game.
Right.
So the problem I think with this is that I think basically what happened is they misidentified what made the game great and how you approach that in light of that for game two. I think I think people fell in love. They really cared for both these characters, and so now the spoilers. Maybe people don't want to hear this. I'm only going to say it. This is going to be like you can just put me on mute for like 20 seconds, guys, if you don't want to hear this. I'll be really fast. But the spoilers for game two is that you play. I think you play all three of these. You play these two characters and a third new character who I
One
believe.
of the scientists survived.
Well, I think it's a non-binary girl who I think she may be in love with the daughter girl, uh,
Uh,
and you end up killing both of these two main characters with this non-binary individual by the story's end, and then you leave that character in a state of um, moral panic and despair. It seems like of having made that decision. So okay, so that's spoilers over. Um, I I think so. The miss ID here, I think, is when you do a sequel and you do one where the first story had a huge twist, gut punch ending. I
hmm.
don't think people want. I really don't think people want or expect or need a even bigger gut punch ending on the second end where you have to kill off the characters you love. I don't think that's. I think on paper people think because that's how everyone discussed this first story. I
Hmm.
think on paper it seems like you have to just up that particular ante, but I think you need to take a different. That's actually not surprising. I think when you just take the surprise ending to people for story one, doing that again and trying to just do more of the same is not surprising. I think you
Right.
need to actually spend. I think it's important to spend more love and care with these characters for the second one. Then that doesn't mean protect them from the ravages of the scenario you put them in,
Mm.
but I don't think you've attached people to them, and now I think you need to respect that and help them move into places where you can see them grow instead of get killed off. That's just kind of my take. It seems a little too. I don't think people play these games to get ripped to shreds. Because they fell in love with the story not because of the ending. Everyone talked about the ending for the first one. They fell in love with it because of the 19 hours before the ending,
Right.
where the characters were alive and you were watching their relationships grow. So I don't think killing them off is what.
It reminds me so much of how Game of Thrones ended, and
Yes,
how
very much so. Yeah.
the idea that like you so I think it's something that I there was a pretty long video essay that this reviewer Lindsay Ellis put together, and she
Hmm.
was kind of going character by character through
Hmm.
the series and showing how like they each one of them in the last like 2 seasons or so just
Yeah.
kind of switched in order to align with what the writers probably intended at the beginning of the series.
Oh, neat.
And it's kind of this weird thing
Love
that
that.
like they they want so and there was this weird kind of conjecture as to like, are you trying to do this thing to be surprising and to do like what people might not expect you to do because these characters have gone this direction,
Yeah.
or are you trying to serve the actual story that you put together? And
Yes.
I think that's a weird thing that a lot of writers, especially when you have so much access to information now,
Yeah.
that like you're trying to handle all of these fan expectations when there are things that like that the story itself should be demanding of you that are independent
Mhm.
of those things. And I think you're right on the money that like the story wasn't demanding just a shock ending because there was a shock ending in the first
Yes.
installment. It was demanding you to pay dividends to the people that liked those characters and show
Yes.
what those why like as you said like why do we like these characters to begin with. And like I'm feeling all this passion. I didn't even play the first one, but
Yeah. No,
but
it's a very
I thought that
passionate. It's something we all care about. Like I really I feel strongly about it too. Like I mean, honestly, I just did the entire Let's Play like 5 years ago. I didn't. I mean, I was like working in grad school or something. And I just kind of would have it on, and I love. So I haven't played a minute of this, other than like maybe at a GameStop once in 2015. But I I really I care about the first one. I think it's a very strong. Uh, it goes in the Hall of Fame of storytelling for video games. But you're absolutely right. The most unsurprising thing you can do is try and pull off a twist ending again in
mm,
Last of Us. I don't think that's what the story requires. That's not what people are demanding. Um,
mhm.
that's not what's going to make it a success. Is to have a brutal, deadly twist again, and that's not what people in Game of Thrones want. Like I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're probably constantly going to talk about grim grim dark storytelling and making
grim dark.
just
Yeah.
so just because you set up like it's not like you said all that shocking to make you love a character and then to kill that character off apropos of nothing. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
actually what you want. What you want is something like I can think of a really good death in Lord of the Rings. Like you're setting up that Denethor is this character who won't listen to anyone, and that like will constantly he's basically this diehard fatalist, and he's begging for the worst case to happen, and then
Hmm.
like when it comes time for his to do the right thing, he's about to roast his son alive, and like that as cartoonish as that death is in Return
Uh-huh.
of the King, like it was such a good allegory for the fact that like he was waiting to burst into flames. Like he was waiting for the actual worst thing to happen. And
Yeah.
so that like you earned that because you set that up with his character, that he's the type of person that was gonna like put his his people at risk at the in the worst case and not actually be a good leader.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like with if you had done the same thing with Aragorn, just because like
Yes.
we like Aragorn, and so we're gonna pull the rug out from under you and make him evil at the last minute, that would have just been like a big screw you to the fans because
Yeah.
you haven't set up that character to make that decision.
Yeah. That has to be earned. That's a decision that has to be earned, and that takes every minute of screen time to build towards that. That has to be very intentionally earned.
Oh,
Yeah.
Justin's coming at my neck with the M Night Shyamalan
Oh, that's a good. Oh,
comment.
got your Philly boy.
Yeah,
That's a good point. I mean, he's. I mean,
it's true. I would I
love
would
him or hate
say
him.
that that it is kind of a crutch that he has of making twist endings,
Hmm.
um, and that it's kind of been something that like because you expect it now, is it really all that surprising?
Yeah,
Um, but I still think the visit is really like I like that even though he has kept that as a motif of his stuff, that the tone that he tackles each new thing seems to be different,
that's
and that
true.
like it's not really playing into the same
It's
type
not
of
just
twist.
killing off a character each time you didn't expect or
Right,
something.
like that type of like if it's the same type of twist each time,
Yeah,
then you can kind of say like, oh well, I know what's going to happen.
yeah.
Um,
He's not a hack at all.
mm.
Yeah, yeah. That would
But
be that would
we
be the
respect your
difference.
opinion, Justin. That was a
No, yeah,
good.
yeah. That was
That was good. That was challenging.
yeah.
Um, so
Speaking
yeah.
okay, so speaking of Lord of the Rings,
Oh yes.
that another interesting thing that occurred. I mean, this comes in and out. People were talking about this like a year ago in some respects. Uh, I don't know. Somehow orcs get like a bit of edgy attention periodically. I'm not sure why. I guess like playing them in WoW has really kind of elevated them as like trying to see them from their perspective.
So my
But
sister actually had
yeah,
a good perspective with this because she was saying back in the day with D&D, it was actually more like you would have certain things that would try to map onto the real world. So you
hmm,
actually had certain aspects of D&D where like you would go into I guess like ancient Africa or ancient South America, which I never even heard of. But it seems like most of the
hmm,
modern examples that we're getting are just kind of like basically like you know it is making an orc a stocky, um, broad nosed, dark skinned character.
yeah,
Is that okay? And
yeah. Quote
most people
slanty
are
eyed. To quote Tolkien. Yeah,
um, and so I'm interested. What was it recently? Do you know if there's like an origin for why it
yeah.
like, popped up again?
I have patient zero up on if you want to share
Oh
my
yeah, yeah, yeah. Here you go.
screen. So some people were pointing this out from one of Tolkien's letters. He described orcs as squat, broad, flat nosed, sallow skinned, with wide mouths and slant eyes. In the fact, degraded and repulsive versions of the. Now, I'm not sure who inserted the two Europeans part. Least lovely Mongol types. So, let's. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was.
Oh
So
yeah, that was
someone was
a
saying,
response.
I find it rather racist. You assume that this disrupt. I think they meant description is referring to me and my family, and they got blocked. So and that I think and that kind of kicked it up a notch, and so people started sharing that a lot. But
Mhm.
yeah, so Orc Lives Matter kind of spawned from this, and other people kind of pointing out that there was also a D&D, the latest D&D. I'm afraid to. Saw some NSFW stuff with
Oh,
this. You can take it off because I won't be able to find it. But someone was sharing what was it called? Well, someone pointed out that in the latest edition of the D&D manual, they were using similar physical descriptions, but mostly they were focused on the concept of how they're bred and biologically inclined to war and
mhm.
of violent instincts, and some of them can rise above into more like civilized states of emotional maturity,
Oh,
but
right,
for the
right. I
most
saw
part,
that too.
yeah, for the most part, they're kind of halfway between animals and humans, and that's basically like a summation. And so people were saying this is an example of racism embedded in Dungeons and Dragons without explanation. Just saying that. So I thought that was interesting.
Hmm.
It's a curious. What do you take on that? So I guess the idea, the descriptions you see from Tolkien, and then you see the D&D content of this is the character type of
Right.
they're biologically inclined to violence, and uh, they're unintelligent, and they can't really rise above their station too much.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
it's there to me. It's kind of two pronged because you
Yeah.
have this kind of tongue in cheek reaction to it, which
Uh-huh.
is basically like using a hashtag like Orc Lives Matter
Yeah.
and these types of reaction like and or orc posting in general, like how like basically taking the piss out of the fact that like this is a fantasy series. None of this is like
Yeah.
in any general time that you're going to play D&D, it's not going to come up that you know, well, okay, this character is becoming dark skinned, and so that means that they're becoming evil, and like you
Mm.
know, like
Hmm.
it's not a rote thing that it's so tied into the series, um,
Yeah.
there might actually be like there are some there might be some properties where that is actually part of the lore, where like it's so baked into it that like you have to kind of come to that thing, to that
Mm.
crossroads.
Yeah.
um
Conceivably, that could be there, but yeah.
right. And so that's what kind of my sister's point was. She,
Uh-huh.
for those of you who don't know, my sister Melissa plays D&D pretty regularly, once a
Yeah.
week. And so she was saying like part of the thing is that like it's pretty much just a baseline. It's like a
Uh-huh.
guideline thing, and so you can play really whatever you want to play within the world.
Yeah.
It's just kind of suggested, and so I think there's that kind of logical fallacy in there that like you don't.
Yep.
It's not really suggesting that people from certain people groups in the real world are, inferior.
Analogous. Yeah.
But I
It's
think.
not like a it's not
Mhm.
like a John Bunyan esque like overlay onto
Mhm.
um, reality of
And I
this
think that's
person. Yeah.
the funny thing about the original series is that you had in Lord of the Rings, which is it's not in D&D, but obviously like it's Tolkien was very influential onto most fantasy games.
Yeah.
um, you had characters like the Easterlings, where
Hmm.
you started getting influences of what seemed to be like references to um, Indo,
Yeah. Like
Asian.
Persia and yeah.
And so you had
Middle
those
East.
things, and I think because of the the little like references you get to them, you have a lot of people reading into them because like they're not a major player within the series.
Yeah.
And
No.
so you get more of like this, well, what does this mean, or like
Hmm.
what was the intention here? um, so overall it's not something that necessarily like bothers me. It's not
Yeah.
something that I think is a real major problem. Um, but I think the what bothers me more is like the example of like somebody tweeting this about this, and then they get replies and then they just block people without actually like interacting with them. And
Yeah.
this kind of like culture of not having like of there being like I'm gonna say this, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna make these insinuations, but I'm not gonna provide any evidence to support this or that claim. Um,
Yeah. The point is to get the endorphin rush of the feedback, and then to have the power to um, to I hate I don't want I'm trying to avoid the word gatekeeping because I don't think that really I guess you feel so powerful. I'm describing situations where I felt this way when you get a lot of feedback and then suddenly you're like, well, maybe I get to determine who and who cannot be involved in this discussion now.
mm,
Uh,
mhm.
you know, Matt Siebel in the chat. He's a big D&D player for many years, and I know that he was going to be upset with this. It's
Uh-huh.
it's actually, I was seeing someone was pointing this out, which I forgot. I feel dumb for having forgotten this, but because they spend Lord of the Rings spends more time on the orcs than the Easterlings, you do have a clearer sense of who the orcs are meant to be. If there's any analogy to be had that plays out in Tolkien's real life experiences versus his fantasy, it's his experiences in Europe during and around World War II, leading up
Right.
to it and during, and the if it's not analogous, but the closest, like clearly, the uh, the orcs are the Germans, if anyone, is
Mhm.
the idea of the Huns, the people who just come in, the Europeans who come in and ravage, that don't have a sense of uh, just kind of like a hyper industrialization that's just going to destroy things for
Mhm.
short term gain, for mere naked power,
Mhm.
and just for the spite of it is kind of, that's the orcish way from Tolkien's perspective, and that was his. He was trying to talk about the German mindset from
Mhm.
World War I to World War
Right.
II, which is I think it's an interesting way to talk about it, and I think it
Mhm.
was very valid then, and I think it wasn't a racial thing. Like, I wouldn't call Germans orcs now, unless you want to get into like EU stuff, I guess. But
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
I think
it's more of
I
a
think
mindset.
you kind of get the worst. Like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, in the
Yeah.
sense that like if you make like say like you can take like Avengers Age of Ultron, you have
Uh-huh.
all these like soulless robot characters that are
Yeah.
fighting the Avengers, and most people think of that as one of like the worst Marvel
Yes.
movies, right? And so like so you have this thing where if you make characters that are just kind of soulless automatons that your heroes fight, you're losing this idea of like the real tragedy of violence is that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually intelligent beings that like are trying to work
Mm.
violence in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with orcs, what you kind of have is this: you have this underlying, theology or theodicy, I guess you should say, that like the most evil thing in this world is are things that have been bastardized by the evil one to be evil. That like
Mm.
evil is a like perversion of good,
It's a good theodicy there. Yeah.
but you get that mostly because the orcs could have been just these peaceful, kind of more civilized beings, but they've been kind of tainted by something, and
Yeah. Which is what you get in the
mhm,
yeah in the Silmarillion and elsewhere.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and that's the but what you lose with the ambiguity of what that how they actually were tainted is like you don't have, you can't really explain to somebody who's making one of these kind of bad faith arguments like this is
Mm.
literally what it is. It was a more of a spiritual thing, or it was a biological thing, but it doesn't have to do with their race per se.
Yes.
um so like it's just a facet of Tolkien's writing that you don't get that kind of level of detail.
Yeah.
But I think he was trying to make a richer point than like these people from this people group are evil, and it takes all the rest of the noble people groups to put them down. It's
Yeah.
more that like most of the people groups were in a state of peace, and then some specific evil diabolical interests started poisoning the well, and
Mm.
try to set brother against brother, and
Mm.
then
Love it.
that's why this group is evil. It doesn't really have to do with their inherent, you know, unintelligence, their inherent, you know, um, lack of civility. Um,
Yeah.
it has to do with something deeper.
Yeah. And just when it comes to D&D, um, the weirder the description. Speaking for myself, the stranger the descriptions of different classes and races are. Um, and races can be a misnomer too when it comes to fantasy stuff, because we're using a term that we use in reality for different. Uh, I guess the term is technically subspecies. People of the same species,
Right.
uh, and when we talk about races in a fantasy, we're talking about clearly different species. So it's not a one to one. But
Right.
the stranger the descriptions are, they're meant to be strange, and they're meant to be uh, invoke reactions just by reading a paragraph on them, because that actually makes them more fun to play. A lot of people get excited about those kind of descriptions of like these characters, and they're not picturing themselves in a racial dynamic. I've never met or heard anyone that implied that they were thinking racially in that sense. They were just thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I was just an entirely different species that could only think in terms of solving problems in terms of violence. That actually sounds like a fun sort of character to try to mimic out for a few hours with some buddies.
Right.
That's all that's meant to happen there. But
Right.
it's an interesting challenge. Obviously, like Lord of the Rings and D&D are two very different mediums. They have very different purposes. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
good
just
point.
both fantasy, but they're both doing things that I think are actually valid, intriguing sort of pursuits to have with works. No one wants to talk about elves. No one. I mean, all of them are stereotyped, right? If we're gonna play this game, that
Right.
they're one to one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and I think that's you're right with like going to different of these subspecies, these different like um you're breaking things down so much that losing you're losing the forest for the trees. Like
Yeah.
you're getting the fact that like there's this proud stout people, and you start getting into like, well, this is a compliment, but like it's exoticizing stout people with big beards and
Yeah.
like all this stuff. Like if you can read into anything if you want to. And I think that's the thing, is when you're like, if you're just starting a playthrough with someone and they're having some kind of problem with like something within this fantasy thing, hopefully what you can do is have a decent conversation about it, and not you know
Yeah.
not just straw man either person, and be able to just like, listen, we just want to fantasize here for an hour and a half every week
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
be
Because
decent about it.
the same guy that pointed out that he thought uh, that D&D was racist was also. I wish I could find the original tweet. It's so buried. He is the same guy that said that reality and escapist, that fictional reality and reality. You can't put hard and fast lines because you're playing fictional stories within reality, right? By real people are playing them, and they're interacting, and they're creating them, and they're discussing them, and it's impacting our real lives the way we think about them. I actually agree, but in light of that, I think that means that you should take more pause when drawing hard and fast conclusions. I don't know, I don't try to ascribe motives to people usually, but it's I sometimes I do think, obviously behind all these hot takes is the idea that the medium is the message in a way, and sometimes I think unbeknownst to us, uh, the prime motivator, the secondary motivator, might be to try and make the world a better place by rooting out everything that was once good and noble and true, and trying to show how you can do it better. But I think the primary motivator is just to get a lot of attention, so that
Right.
you can be king or queen for a day, which is unfortunate. But I don't think human human nature doesn't seem to change. It seems like every time people think that it can and does change, those are the very people that become the monsters that they hate, because they have to use increasingly large levers of power in order to try and tamp down something that is untamable, which
Right.
is the human condition. It's sadly, it's you have to live in light of human nature. You can't live with the woulda couldas of what you would prefer human nature to be, because you're gonna frustrate yourself to your grave, and you might take a few other people to your grave with you, which is really
Right.
sad when that happens. But anyway, that's my moralizing for the day. What did Justin say? He's got elves, the white man holding back the orcs. Lol, Jk. Yeah, or that they're
Uh,
all feminine, or I don't know how you want to play that. Like um, yeah,
I
it,
think
it's
I think that the elves actually always bothered me more than the orcs, because
yeah,
I think that just the nature, like always really thought that the bastardization of like elves or men, like
mm,
was a really elegant way to talk about evil. Um,
yeah,
that like and it never really came across to me as being some kind of weird racist allegory. But like the elves being this race that are always set apart, I
mm,
always thought was this interesting thing of like, I wonder what, if anything, this is trying to talk about. And
yeah.
um,
It is harder, isn't it? Is it
it,
like the
it,
intelligentsia class or something, like the
yeah, I always
Oxbridge
wondered
type?
if that was, um, Tolkien trying to work out like the like a chosen people, like that
Yeah,
there are these people that are always destined to cross to the golden or the gray havens,
yeah,
and like it's this kind of predestined race versus all these other races that are being kind of like given grace, um,
mm.
and
Yeah,
so
kind of like an unfallen, like a what if man had not fallen kind of
Mhm.
scenario, but has to live in a fallen world.
Right. And so I
Yeah,
think because it
sure.
was because he never made that race any kind of distinct
Mm.
like racial, he never gave it any kind of like, Jewish or
Yeah,
or if he wanted to, I guess he could have like gone into like Islam or that type of thing.
yeah,
Because he never gave it any of those flavors, it always
yeah,
just seemed like this vaguely priestly class that is kind of like very condescending. And so like I wasn't sure
yeah.
like is this look, but I that
I always felt a little ashamed being of the race of men. You know, we
right.
don't have a lot of good examples, and I think that was the point. We
Mm,
have the best that man the race of men can hold up are very uh, frail. I mean, Aragorn being the best example, the best of men, and
mhm,
he the one of the reasons he is, uh, you know, that he can handle the throne is because he understands this. I guess that would be the
mhm,
one. I don't even know how nobler he is than those who fell to temptation on his left and right, but he just seemed to be more aware that he could fall at any moment, that he wasn't that he didn't deserve, and that's probably why he was Strider for so long, and that's
mhm,
what made him. That's the sort of redemption arc you have to do for men.
mhm.
Speaking of the race of men, that goes for women too. But like that's what you have to do when there's these demigods walking
Mhm.
amongst you, I guess, like elves and
Yeah,
more ancient races
I
like
think that's what I always ask myself.
you know
Is this a mortal race that has somehow been chosen to
mm,
be higher, or is it a immortal race more along the lines of like angels or
yeah,
demigods?
they're like an angelic. I always thought of them as more like a, yeah, servants, like kind of divine council, like angelic class sort of.
Because if you read on fairy stories, it's so
Mm,
fascinating considering what Tolkien's cosmology was. Because he kind of just writes
I
as if
never
like
read it. I've always meant to for like 15 years,
he,
and I
he
never have.
literally writes as if like, so fairies are real.
Yeah.
Let's just let's just
Great.
operate under that, because
Let's start there. Yeah.
his major point is that like there's a reason why we have these stories, and so he talks about the numinous aspect of life and how like we've lost this in our storytelling. And so he talks
Mm,
about like you get it a little bit in modern fables. You get it a little bit in really epic romance stories, but
Hmm.
we've kind of mushed down, like at that time they had been mushing down all those ancient legends into very consumable, like
Yeah.
little kind of like, you know, booklets for children. And
Yeah.
so he was saying like we've lost this, and that's it's like and I'm taking it upon myself to resurrect this. And
Hmm.
lo and behold, he did a pretty good job. um
Yeah. Yeah. He. As far as most people are aware, most modern people are aware, he invented the genre. Which I guess he would just say that he was a man out of time who just
right.
carried it on. But I mean, it did. I guess it, and I suppose On Fairy Stories points this out that it effectively died in the
Mhm.
popular imagination, and
Right.
so he single-handedly seems to have made it relevant again by making one of the most it's seemingly irrelevant stories to the modern age, and yet I guess being written by a man who lived through Battle of the Somme and all that kind of horrors, that people
Right.
needed something mythic again to understand reality,
Mm.
to view that lens, which is so fun that we're talking about Lord of the. I I didn't expect we'd spend this much time on this, but this is good. I mean, he
Well,
deserves the
I'm
bonus.
certainly enthusiastic about how there's going to be a new Lord of the Rings series and
Hmm.
a Wheel of Time series,
Yeah.
because apparently Wheel of Time has been something that has kind of been like between Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, was kind of like what I think real fantasy fans have been like subsisting on.
Yeah.
Because I went with my sister to one of these sci-fi fantasy conventions,
Yeah.
um, and she was saying, and like there was just a panel that was about Wheel of Time, and this guy had like all, I don't know how many books there are, like 13 or something books out on the table.
Oh wow.
Um, but anyway, but I feel like it'll be cool to talk about these series as they come out,
Oh, I
and
can't
talk about
wait.
like what, yeah, and talk about, oh, and that there's that Green Knight movie coming out soon. I have to keep tabs on that so that
Oh, that's right.
we
That's
can
one of
keep.
my favorite uh,
Oh, me too. I
actual,
was
yeah,
When I was little, I
author.
had
Yeah.
like a Arthur, little like Arthur, Wishbone type reader.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and
Yeah.
that was one of the early fantasy things that I read.
Isn't
Um,
it so good? Like, well, I mean, you saw my art on it. Like, it's just such a nice, um,
mm,
heroic, tragic story of like a man just kind of walking out to meet his fate in the unknown, in the land of fairy, in a way, like a fairy knight,
mhm. I
effectively.
think so. I think the three mythic stories that influenced me most are that
Mm.
Robin Hood, which I
Yeah.
had another like reader like that, and then the Jungle Book, which I think we should talk
Oh,
about at
neat.
some point,
Oh, that'd be
because
nice.
the original Jungle Book is one of my favorite, and I still every time I bring it up, I have to bring up the fact that they never end it like the book ends, where he walks off with his wolf pack, and like
Oh, wow.
like all the movie versions end with him going to the humans and like
Yeah.
living, but like the book, the book he was raised with wolves, and he gets adopted kind of by Baloo and Bagheera, but and then like joins the humans, but in the book, he gets raised by wolves, and then after his confrontation with Shere Khan,
Yeah.
he just like all the humans and all the jungle people are afraid of him. They like don't want to deal with him anymore.
Hmm.
So he leaves with his wolf brothers, and I'm like, this is such an epic ending.
That's
and,
great. That's
and none of
another
the,
example where people they want to read. Um, people have read. They've people have spent time in the past trying to find different human races
mm,
that can be that they presume are caricaturized onto the at least the Disney portrayal.
mm,
Um, and Rudyard Kipling has, I guess, he has a spotted past according to some people in terms of his views on particular topics. I don't even remember what they were. I just remember he was a little controversial today by today's standards.
mm.
But that's a really interesting. That's a different take. I mean, that's actually kind of a reversal of what some people would expect if he were trying to put a like a racialist spin on a
Oh, right,
story.
right,
It's
right.
like the human had eventually, obviously, people got to stick with their kind. But his
Mm.
kind, he did stick with his kind. He stuck with his wolves. That's
Right.
that's actually a really
Oh,
nice.
Justin apparently is looking forward to. He says
Hmm,
Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings are both being done by Amazon. So,
yeah,
but he thinks Wheel of Time might get axed, which would be a
yeah.
shame because it seems like there are a lot of. So I know Brandon Sanderson is a big uh,
Oh yeah.
author who wrote the last entry in the Wheel of Time series as like a tribute to the author Robert Jordan,
Oh cool.
because it was like that was the planned ending, and he had written, uh, I think as far as I know, like half the book or so, um, and
Oh
so
yeah. That was
he had finished it
legendary
up.
when he died, right? That kind of
Mhm.
shook the literary world, the fiction world. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think he's been doing live streams about it. So
Oh
as far as I
cool.
know, at least the behind the scenes are still going strong. So hopefully that means
That's good.
that the show is still going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. And we've got there's the Narnia series that may still be in the works, but honestly it keeps getting like I mean it's been I think 2 years now of not much news, so I don't know. No news might be bad news in this instance,
Well,
but
it's I think now you got the weird like true believer movies to do. Like you have Silverchair, which is not well.
yeah.
I think everybody pretty much loves The Horse and His Boy, but it is very different than the rest of the series.
Well, my understanding is they're going to because I know what you're saying, but my understanding is they're just going to take the world as an IP and then they're going to tell a new story within that world.
Oh,
So, which I don't know how well. I feel like that's got ample opportunities for tone deafness because,
uh-huh.
because of the nature of that particular series of being tailor made to make a very particular um, uh, that medieval heavens cosmological kind of framework of like unless they
Hmm.
do it I don't know maybe it's like American Horror Story where every season is different and they kind of
Hmm.
reset and then try to surprise you each time, which could kind of be interesting. But to tell a
Hmm.
new story but have a very particular flavor and thrust to it that feels very Narnian without just
Hmm.
resorting to like, oh yeah, Narnia means like they tried to do with the Star Wars series.
Uh-huh.
Narnia just means there's a lion. We need to do illusion. Let's
Narnia means hope.
yeah, like just attach like okay, we gave you your lightsabers and your star destroyers and now this is Star Wars, right? And like, no, it has to actually feel like it has the same heartbeat. That's going to be tough. And like you said, especially because there's 7 books and they're designed to have 7 different heartbeats. So how you make an 8th and have it still resonate with people is going to be a challenge.
It's
So I
funny
think,
though because Magician's Nephew is my favorite book. I
ooh,
think in the
I
series.
can I can see that. Yeah, I can see
Um,
that. It
yeah,
has a
and
very kind of
mm,
it's a different flavor of fantasy that makes sense for
mm.
what you're interested in. Yeah.
And I could see that being something that they could do to reboot it if they wanted to do it. The professor and what like his experiences are.
Oh, that'd be
Um,
lovely. Yeah, because then
that would be
that's
a
like
cool way to do it,
1890s or something, and it's almost
right?
like a Sherlockian London. Uh, that would be oh my goodness.
That would be cool, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll wait
Yeah,
with
we'll
bated
cross
breath.
that bridge unless they burn that down. Hopefully not.
All
Yeah.
right, so it's time for the segment we've all been waiting for: ancient meme review.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. So what were you yes. Okay. Okay. When painting is to be too
When
much.
parenting gets to be too much, for only $20 a month, you can have your baby stored in the cloud. Deal.
Ugh,
Oy
love
vey.
it. Love it.
So yeah,
Cringe laugh right now. Yeah.
this I was inspired to do this because I kept seeing people use that Boo Boo the Fool meme um with the jester dude who was like
Is that the
you know
name? I had to look that up when you said Boo Boo the Fool. I
oh
knew it
yeah, I saw
bizarre.
like like 3 people in a row use that, and I was like, oh wait, we love anachronistic stuff here on StriderTalk. Why
Hmm.
not just look up all these really funny medieval and ancient memes
I like it.
um, and do our little review thing. So here's a ancient Egypt one. When your
Yep.
Game Boy needs batteries,
Yep. Oh, that's
go to
good.
the TV remote.
I like that. Yep. Yep. Kids today don't understand.
No, when you read your Facebook post from 2009.
Oh, that's good.
I always
Wow.
love that. Always happens to me when I'm getting like one of those Facebook memories, and it
Yeah.
says like this post, and it's like just absolute self-indulgent. Like, look what I had for lunch today.
Yeah. Or I was trying. So the cringiness on my like of my posts from 2009 were like me trying to be extra funny and clever. Um,
Oh,
just kind of like a joke in every sentence, kind of
right.
junk, and like commenting, like three sentences on someone's photo that kind of, uh, humble brags and turn things like, I don't know, that I just thought that was cool.
I
Then
had yeah, I had plenty of that.
terrible.
But I love these. I love like the to me the best part of this is that it's actually showing off how good the painters were
Yeah, it
in these
actually,
time periods because it's actually very much like venerating how they could get such nuanced
mm,
expression into
yeah,
their figures.
you just needed a context, and the art does speak for itself once you provide that. Yeah.
Right. When you've been dating a few months now and you can finally reveal yourself as the psychopath you really are.
Oh, that's nice.
I love it. Oh, I thought you would appreciate this.
Yeah, very
There's a
good.
there's a lot of this. Like if you look for ancient Greece
Uh huh.
memes, there's a lot of like Sparta versus Athens stuff, and I don't know how like accurate that is because I feel like we really
We've memed them.
overgeneralize about ancient
Yeah.
civilizations.
Yeah.
Um, but I just thought this was a good summary of that.
No, that's good.
When your arch nemesis flee to Egypt because he thought you were going to murder him, you weren't, only to be murdered by the Egyptians instead.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Yep. Yep. Nice.
Uh,
Good Sulla reference there.
when you tap your pockets and you can't feel your phone. I love this. This is such a good expression of like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. That's nice.
Let me see if I can zoom in on this one.
Oh gosh.
My
Caracalla. Yeah.
might delete soon. I feel cute this pic. Oy vey. Oh, I thought you might appreciate this. When you read Percy Jackson once in fourth grade,
Oh,
you
that's
know I'm something of a mythologist myself. That was totally me though when I was younger.
oh
Like
yeah.
watching like gargoyles that has like all this, it's like wish. Like I keep saying that about the books. I don't know how many of these books I read were like wishbone versions of
Mhm.
ancient stuff. Um, but
Yeah.
like I would always read those and be like, I know all this stuff about ancient, this ancient civilization or something, and really
Oh
I
yeah.
just read a real dumbed down version of the book.
Yeah.
I feel you, babe. Come over. I can't. I'm hiding a body. My dad's not home. I know.
Okay, that's good. That's
This
good.
really hit me because it's Hamlet was one of my favorite plays
Oh yeah.
growing
Sure.
up. So, oh, so
Very
this
good.
is this is a gamer girl bathwater joke.
Oh great.
Uh,
Oh, I hate it. I love it.
that's pretty good. Oh, and so that it says SCA memes. So my sister was in the SCA.
Oh, cool.
They do medieval reenactment stuff.
Oh, how neat. Nice.
When the weekend's over and you have to say goodbye to your real self for a few days.
Oh my
I,
gosh.
I love this book because it looks so blasé, even though it's like a demon in this chick's room.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, okay, so who's the real self? Is it the demon or is it the person?
Oh, getting philosophical on me there.
Yeah. I love memes because they actually like memes used to be that they would appear to have a sense of seriousness, but deep down they were just trying to be ironic and silly. And people got tired of that pretty quickly, which is it's nice. It's the human spirit continues to burst forth. Now they just appear to be silly, but actually have a very earnest, genuine kind of moment of
Right, right,
like oh wow, that's actually a very thoughtful thing that I can relate to that because it's thoughtful actually, and it made me
right.
laugh. But it's also like it's yeah
It's funny
very
because it's true.
yeah, which is great. Like what's wrong with things being true? Like we like that.
Right.
So you know
Yeah. Like it's funny because, like I said, like I thought, like I would always read the Sunday, or not even the Sunday funnies. I would read like the comic strips growing up,
uh-huh.
and when I started seeing web comics go more towards like, like more full page stuff, or like a lot of them have some different like nerdy spins on them. They're not like
Yeah,
traditional like earnest jokes. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's going to be gone now. But then when memes started circulating, I'm like, oh, this is what that is. Like, it's just a one panel joke.
yeah,
And you actually get really earnest um, comedy from it.
yeah. Mm. Yep.
He left the oven on. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's just like fun recontextuals. You know, it's like I guess he's putting on a helmet, but you can just man. See, this tells you a lot. This actually, um, you can you can critique yourself for how you might panel a comic because
Oh,
someone could easily misunderstand how you drew something, and then it suddenly looks like someone's shocked, like they left the oven on.
oh, I love this book just because I love this template here.
Yeah.
She was one of my favorite miners when that was a thing. Did you get lost in mine at all?
Wait, what? No, no, no. But I
So
found out about it like 2 years too late, and then I have to watch YouTube compilations of
yeah,
funny vines. So I
uh,
hate that. Yeah, I guess TikTok's that now, and I refuse to try TikTok. I'll just watch a compilation when it's dead.
that's
But
fine.
Vine was pretty good. This was a Vine thing. That's funny.
hmm Yeah, no, what was funny to me was that I realized that I really liked, like there were like several female comedians that were using Vine, and I thought it was so funny that like I
Yeah,
trended more towards finding their. So there was like one girl that would do like waitressing jokes, and
yeah,
how like it's 5 minutes to close, but I want to be seated. Um, and
sure.
then she do some kind of like Schrodinger you know Schadenfreude thing where she like zooms in on her face and starts crying, like that
Yeah,
type of thing. Um,
yeah.
so like that.
My
So
feeling when
yeah. um, so yeah. So that I went through that after it was dead too, where I would go through a bunch
nice.
of YouTube stuff. This is my favorite one.
Oh, good. We had a Caligula. Now we get a Nero.
Uh,
Oh, that's
all right.
good.
Well, that's it for me.
That was nice. That might be guys in the chat. Let us know if you're interested in that sort of thing. We kind of want to. This might be a new format for us where we shoot the breeze for a bit. We tackle a couple topics, and then we have kind of have the we let our hair down and do the decompressor segment at the end, and that's um, yeah.
Yeah, I
John
think
came up
we're
with
going.
something cool for just looking at some paleo memes.
Yeah, and I think we could also just talk about more of like stuff that we're reading and watching and everything.
Sure.
Because I've been reading uh, Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind. Oh, that was something I was going to mention. So
Ooh,
there were a
yeah.
couple books. I got Dune, and I got that,
Mhm.
and I got them from this site called Bookshop,
Uh-huh.
who is they're contributing money to independent bookstores. But anyway, they
Nice.
sent me an email that let me know that they passed $1 million um,
Wow.
for independent bookstores. I was really happy that
Oh,
that
that's
was like
great.
you know
Love to hear that. That's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah. So I was happy about that, and they're both really good so far. So I'm excited to keep reading them.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm. What am I reading? Uh, Nothing too. I mean, I just finished. Well, I'm just about to finish Horse and His Boy at the same time as reading Planet Narnia. So just kind of paralleling. I've been meaning to do this for like a year or so now, but kind of traipsing through the mercurial aspect of Horse and His Boy, and just to end it here, like there's a cute moment at the end where the two uh, Shasta and Erebus, the two main the male and female characters in the story. So it's got the mercurial thing of literally like the metal mercury. So you're playing. There's an alchemical element, and there's like the cosmological of the Greek god Mercury of swiftness and the metal, how it always like can separate and flow and come in and out. So his way of demonstrating a happy ending at the end from a mercurial aspect is this show. He says in a just like a throwaway, very British way, a throwaway of version of happily ever after is the characters. These two characters, they I wish I had the book in front of me. I could just read it. I can quote it. Uh, but he says they fought and they made up again so many times that they just decided to get married and make it official. So I thought that was kind of cute.
I love that.
That was something you could only do in Horse and His Boy. You would not be able to do that in the other ones.
All right.
But to do that whole like language thing and the anyway, that's for another episode. But this has been good. I think we had a good thanks,
Yeah.
thanks to Justin and to Matt for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks
you
for
following through.
and if all goes as according to plan,
Yes.
we're going to be joined by Kent Heidelman tomorrow.
Yes.
He does the um, he does like a workshop podcast
Mm-hmm.
on comics, and he has done he's done Kirby McStaples, um, which is a like kids oriented like review show on Instagram, where he would go through kind of like big two comics issues and give his thoughts on them with this little
Mm-hmm.
furry guy on his hand.
Oh,
Um,
fun. Yeah.
and I think Kent directed that show, so I'm interested to talk to him about if that's going to continue, because he hasn't done one in a little bit. And he does kind of like kids horror comics. I think more like Real Monsters.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have him on to pick his brain, um, and do a little bit more of this where we just kind of shoot the breeze and um, see where somebody's how they're what they're consuming, how it's influencing their art, um, and generally how they're getting through their creative creative tasks. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It'll be nice to have a guest, and it'll be cool that we'll be picking his brain, seeing what his insights are in comics making. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, this will be exciting. So so tune in for that. So that's is that 7 p.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll
Eastern?
shoot for 7 tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and yeah, thanks again for stopping by. Please subscribe and like
Mm-hmm.
the video, and hit the notifications so you know when we are going to go live.
Yep. And until next time, this is Matt C. I'm here with my buddy John Matos.
Yes, thanks again. We'll talk to you later.
Later.